Hi, everybody. This is Alpha. I'm the host of Stories from Behind the Counter. Before we get started in any of these episodes, I just wanted to give a little disclaimer. Some of these stories are not exactly family friendly, especially not very child friendly. Some of them do use some strong language. Some of them do talk about some rather vile things sometimes. Others is just not exactly something some people might want their children or anyone else around them to hear. Not exactly public friendly. If you have a job in general, you know what I'm talking about. Some things that happen in life are just not public, perfect conversation. So, with that in mind, please keep in mind where you're listening to this, who you're listening to it around, and how you're going to listen to it. Also, if you have any stories that you would like to share with me, please send them my way. I am always up for more stories. I only have so much as my own. So if you have anything you want to share with me, please feel free to share them with me in my email account. Send them to workwithalphag@gmail.com. That is workwithalphag@gmail.com. One last thing I wanted to remind you all about is please make sure you're following me. I am not just on one platform. I am on Spotify, Patreon, Castbox, Podbean, and Buzzsprout. So please, if you have any of those, Patreon is probably going to help me out the best, and hopefully later on it'll be able to help you guys out as well. For $1 a month, you'll be getting ad-free episodes, as well as later on I'm hoping to be able to do Q&As, just be able to talk with you guys, one-on-one conversations, group chats, whatever. So please make sure you're checking it all out. Let's get into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back. As always, this is Stories from Behind the Counter, and I am your host, Alpha. So I just want to start this episode out by thanking absolutely everyone who has been supporting me, listening to me, helping share everything, and even sharing their stories with me. Thank you so much. I know I've said it before a lot, but again, I really appreciate it. I want to be here without any of you guys. That being said, this is the end of season 1. I will be taking a little bit of a hiatus from uploading episodes after this. I will be back, I promise. I just need more episodes and a little bit of time to focus on some work, as I do still have a full-time job on top of this. So please make sure that you're liking, sharing, commenting. Definitely make sure you're subscribing to Patreon. $1 a month gets you ad-free content, 24 hours early access, and the more we do on there, the more I can do with you guys directly. The more I could do for you guys and get maybe some merch and other things going, maybe plan some trips or whatever we want to do. But I still need more help before I can plan on doing any of that. I do have some plans to try and expand the show and to give a little more as a show to all of you listeners. So, please, the more you help me, the more you support me, the more I can do. Most of all, I need your guys' stories. Again, I don't care what walks of life it's from, working at a gas station, working in retail, fast food, EMT, police work, nurses. If you deal with the public, you know you have a story for me. Please send them in. One more note, we're going to pop in here real fast. This is going to be a little bit of a longer episode than usual. It's going to have some more stories. It's the last little bit of stories that I have typed up and ready to go right now. That being said, if you want more long episodes like this, I definitely need more stories, and I can make it happen. So again, please send me whatever you have. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the episode. This first story for this episode is going to actually be from Harmony again. Harmony wrote in saying, "So I have another funny one that happened to me pretty recently. My dad just moved here and he's been coming in a lot in the mornings just to say hi, and he'll bring me coffee, chit chat, and just get the day started since he just moved into town. So at this point, he's standing right there at my desk, looking like a regular customer. And another customer comes up. Let's call him Chad, not his real name. And he comes in quite a lot. Chad always has something to say about what I'm wearing or how I look. I guess he recently saw some pictures of me on Facebook, which I'm not friends with him, so I'll leave that where that is. But in this particular picture, I was wearing leather pants. So he comes in and he says, "Oh, where are your leather pants today? I saw you on Facebook in Vegas." Well, at this point, I've learned to just kind of banter back and forth in these situations. My job is sales. So I responded with, "Well, I left them at home, of course," and I just tried to laugh it off. Then he says, "Well, I just wanted to tell you that you look really nice in your jeans today. They're very tight." And I said, "Okay," which I turned to my dad, who's standing right there. "And this is my dad, by the way." That customer got so flustered, straight faced and respectfully. He turns to my dad and says, "It's very nice to meet you." Shakes his hand. My dad's a bit hard of hearing, so I don't think he had quite heard what the customer had said in the first place, but it definitely made Chad feel super awkward because he walked away immediately after that. I found it pretty hilarious. Me and my coworker were just cracking up about it all day. I should also mention Chad is right around my dad's age, or at least in his 50s. So it was quite funny that he got put in that awkward spot. Kind of did it to himself. This is me speaking as Alpha again. Man, I really don't know about some of these people. It amazes me how many people still want to go for that 20, 30-year-old age gap. It's kind of creepy, but I do find it hilarious that he put himself in that spot. That is what we call foot and mouth syndrome, where you just say something and realize afterwards it is a very, very bad idea. Well, hopefully he learned his lesson, and hopefully he will stay a little more respectful to you next time. Thanks, Harmony. Keep sending in your stories. I know you've got more. Alright, guys, so we're going to move on to the next story. This one is actually one of my own personal ones. One day, I'm working at a hardware store. A customer decides to buy a 50-gallon water heater, and he tells me that he needs help loading it. Okay, that's no big deal. It's actually a rather average request where I work at. So I try to call someone to help since we were a little bit busy, and my team and I had a line. So we were trying to deal with the line, get everybody taken care of. But after a few minutes, no one responds. But we get the line knocked down enough where I can kind of break off and help load this customer's water heater. He's already pulled his vehicle up to the main front doors right next to the desk that I'm working at, and he's just patiently waiting. I get my gloves on, I walk out the main door with the customer, and I see an old 1990s body style Subaru Outback. But it has a metal rack on the roof that extends out over the hood and connects down by the bottom of the bumper. I'm not sure how he had this fully attached and hooked up, if it was welded on, bolted on, but I was nervous. Of course, he says he does this sort of thing all the time. Not like I haven't heard that one before. But whatever. I don't have much of a choice. So I help lift and load the water heater, and he makes me pull it over the hood. Not on the roof, centered, but on the racking over the hood. All I could think of is, how are you going to see your traffic lights? How bad is this going to affect your driving with it being top heavy and front loaded? That wind has got to be awful. But he strapped it down and he took off like nothing was out of the ordinary. I can only assume that he made it home safe. I have seen the car driving around town since. But it's still a scary thought that he does this fairly regularly, if not very regularly. Some people. Alright, I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story now. So, I have a coworker that was telling me a story about when he worked at this hardware store. My coworker, we'll call him JB, said that one day, while he was working in the concrete department, a customer came up and said that he needed help loading up a cart with 20 bags of concrete and that he would need help getting it loaded into his car. Again, nothing strange, rather common in this line of work. No big deal. So, JB helps load the customer's cart, gets him to the registers, gets him checked out, and starts following the customer out to his vehicle, figuring he's looking for a pickup truck or at least an SUV of some sort. 20 bags of concrete is pretty heavy. Well, the customer says, "Oh, I'm just right here," and stops at a brand new, just off the lot Corvette. JB said it still had the stickers on it. At this point, JB said he was not comfortable loading this into the Corvette for a few reasons. A, it's brand new, it's clean, and just an all-around nice car. B, it still has the stickers on it. Usually when you buy a car, even when it's used or whatever, they take all of that off. How do I know you're not just taking this for a joyride or a test drive and you end up ruining the inside of this car for whatever reason? Sorry, not helping you do that. C, each bag of concrete he got was 60 to 80 pounds, and he has 20 of them. That's somewhere between 1,200 and 1,600 pounds, just on its own. The Corvette's suspension is not meant to handle that, especially if you hit a bump or something like that. So JB said, "I'm sorry, but I refuse to be held responsible or accountable for anything that happens to this car. You're on your own at this point." He doesn't recall getting any customer complaints through corporate or even up to management, so luckily enough, he never had to deal with any backlash from the customer. But I don't blame him personally. I probably would have done the same thing. Sorry, buddy, you're on your own. I don't know why he thought it was a good idea to bring that kind of brand new car with stickers to get 20 bags of concrete, but that's insane, and I agree, it seems rather shady. All right, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story now. This is another one from when I worked at a very small retail company as a store manager. It's been a very busy day. I'm getting ready to go to the bank and try and hit my lunch. I've been at the store since about 4 a.m., and it's about 10 a.m. at this point. I'm hungry, slightly irritated, and I need to go to the bank because the store is extremely low on money. Well, of course, this is when my ice vendor pulls into the store. I've been having an issue with him just loading up the new ice on top of the old ice, not rotating his stock like he's supposed to, and he's not getting out any of the half-empty, broken, leaking bags or anything like that. So, on my way out of the door, as he's bringing in his pallet of ice, I inform him that he needed to rotate and get all of the bad bags and credit them to me today, and that he needed to do it every time he comes to my store. It is in the contract that his company has with my company. The vendor immediately starts going off on me that he doesn't have time to do this most days and he'll get to it when he can, and I need to calm the fuck down. Well, at this point, I cut him off and I say, first off, it's your job. You need to do it every time. Secondly, if you don't remove that crap that's melting and just keep stocking on top of it, you're going to regrow mold and it's all going to be ruined. You'll be giving yourself more work later. Just do it now, please. I tried to start walking away, but of course, he doesn't like that and he starts yelling at me and cussing at me that I'm not his boss and he doesn't have time for this bullshit and blah blah blah. I start trying to tell him that he can go ahead and take his pallet, load it back into his truck, or he can do his job. If not, take your shit and get out of here. I'll call your boss later. He starts saying, I'll call him now. This is bullshit. You can't do this. You're going to talk to him right now and find out you're wrong. I turned around and said, no, I will call him later. And he just kept yelling over me and cussing at me, trying to call his boss immediately. Again, I'm on my way out, trying to head to the bank. I have a bag of money on my shoulder, and my car is already started. I can't just lollygag here. and I'm getting irritated, on top of already being irritated from the day. So him yelling at me and wanting to act like a child over something so small, which is his job, I'm done. That's when I finally started actually yelling, and I started cussing back at him. I finally snapped. I started yelling back, saying, "You know what? Shut the fuck up. I don't have the time for your bullshit. If you're not going to do your job right, then fucking leave. I will call your boss later. Right now, I have a job that I need to do, and I'm going to do it. So shut the fuck up and do your goddamn job, bully, or get off my property. If you say one more fucking word, you're going to be 86th. And I stormed off to my car. I went to the bank, came back to the store, found out he still tried to get the key to unlock the icebox so he could still try filling it, but my ASM had heard everything and seen everything, so she kicked him off the property before he could do anything. I called the local vendor contracted through the big ice company, and I told him what had happened. I told him that if they can't send adults to do their job, I'm canceling my services with them. I already have permission from my district manager to do so. He refused to let me terminate the contract. He just ended up sending the same guy later on in the day after I was usually gone. And for the most part, I stopped having issues. But he did his job right from that day on. I'm sorry I had to go that far. But when it comes to people doing their job, I tried to stay respectful. I tried to stay calm. You start yelling and cussing at me, I'm going to match your energy. I've said it before, and I'm going to do it every time. I don't care if you're a coworker, a vendor, my boss, or a customer. Sometimes your energy needs to be matched so you can realize how much of a dick you're being. Especially if we've already tried to remain calm, stayed respectful. After a little bit, we can only take so much. So don't be surprised when it happens. Now, should I have gone that far and dropped that many F-bombs? No, absolutely not. As a professional, I understand that. But at the same time, as a human being, sometimes we just get tired of it. And if this is the way to get people to listen, sometimes it has to happen. Just make sure you do it right. Stay respectful first. Once they cross that line, let them know. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next story now. This one is about the lady who called in to my store and she wanted some free stuff. Now, I will preface saying I understand life happens, and when you're in a bad situation, sometimes companies are able to help. But when you get demanding, people are less likely to help you. Please keep this in mind, people. So, I'm working at the service desk at a hardware store, and at this store, the service desk associates are also the store's operators. In other words, we screen and transfer all of the incoming calls to where they need to go. I answer the phone one day, and it's a little hard to hear this lady over the phone. It sounds like she's probably on a cell phone out in the middle of nowhere, and she isn't getting very good reception. From what I was able to gather out of the call, her parents' dog had chewed through their sewage line. They were wondering if the store would donate what they needed to fix it quickly, as the parents were handicapped, elderly, and low on funds. I say, one moment, let me try to get you to a member of management. If that is a possibility, they would be the ones to make that decision. Let me transfer you. So I transfer the call off to my manager. The manager's line is actually a cell phone, and I hear it ring right around the corner from me. I hear the MOD answer the call, and I hear a little bit of the conversation. He is also having trouble trying to understand the customer. Then I get a customer come up to the service desk with a return. So, of course, I focus on my customer, finish the return, and send the customer on his way. As that customer is walking away, the MOD that took the call is now walking past me. So I called out to them and asked what happened with the call. The MOD said that the customer got annoyed trying to repeat themselves and started yelling. When he said that he was trying to help her out, but it's hard to hear her, that's when she suddenly got perfect reception and she yelled, cussing and demanding that he donate the parts that they need to fix her parents' sewage line. The moment she called him an asshole is the moment where he said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can no longer help you out. I hope you have a good day." And he hung up. We had never heard anything back from that customer, at least not me or that specific MOD. So I don't know if she went to one of the other locally owned hardware stores or another chain or whatever, but it just kind of goes to show like, look, we understand everyone's in a hard time. We're trying to do our best, but if you don't have good reception and we can't hear you or understand you, don't get annoyed at us. It's not our fault if you live out in the middle of nowhere where there's not very good reception. If you can have a landline out there, that's what you need to have. But even in the middle of nowhere, those aren't always the best. But it's not our fault. We were trying to help, and they got annoyed. Sorry. But on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and move right on into the next story, which is another one where I was at the service desk at the same hardware store. This was honestly just a day or two before or after the call with the lady that needed the sewage line. So, again, I'm working at the service desk at this hardware store, and an elderly couple, probably in their 70s, if not older, just by the looks of them at least, come up wanting to return some insulation. They had ordered the items online, and they had their paperwork showing their order number and everything. So I type in the order number to the return information, and I tried scanning single rules of insulation, but the system kept saying item not found on receipt, which is rather unusual. So I looked further into the order, and I see that they had bought all of the insulation in bulk as two 12-packs. But they only have 6 single rolls of insulation left, and that's what they're trying to return. Sadly, the company will not allow that. They were bought as packs, they need to be returned as packs. So, of course, I try to inform them that I'm afraid we won't be able to make this return happen, as they were special ordered as a bulk SKU, not individual SKUs. Therefore, I can't return single rolls. It has to be a pack. Obviously, this does not go very well. It does not make them happy. They both start going off on me that this is absolute bullshit, and they were told they needed X amount, and they didn't need that much, and we need to take their shit back and give them their fucking money back now. I apologized, and I said, I'm so sorry. That is not within my power personally. I'm just a regular associate, and I have to, and the man cuts me off, yelling, just inches away from the lady's ear, into her ear. He doesn't fucking care. We're screwed on this. This is bullshit. To which I tried my best to calm him down and replied with, Sir, it's not that I don't care. I'm just the low man on the totem pole here. I don't have that power to make that kind of decision. I personally am not able to do that, so let me try and call a member of management. Perhaps they can find a workaround, but as for me, my hands are tied on this. I do deeply apologize. Well, that seemed to calm them both down for a little bit, while I called for management to come up and see if there's anything that we could actually do for them. Well, the manager on duty, the same gentleman who took the call, came up and asked the customers how he could help them. They immediately started going off, saying the same things they had said to me about being told they needed to buy X amount and that they didn't actually need it and we need to take it back and give them their money, etc., etc., etc. As the MOD looked into the situation, looked into the order, and figured out what was going on, he tried to explain that sadly there's nothing we can do to help them per policy. This stuff was not only special ordered at home, online, through the advice of their contractor that wasn't suggested by our store, much less someone who worked here, and that if they were going to continue to be aggressive, he'd have to call the local PD and have them and their installation escorted off the premises. Obviously, this didn't go very well either, but with the, for lack of a better term, threat of calling the police department, they did fairly calmly take their stuff and leave the store. I don't remember ever hearing any comments or complaints to corporate that was trickled down to the store, so I don't know. Maybe they just took it out on their contractor. If so, I feel bad for that guy. I just don't understand why people have to be so aggressive. about things that are out of other people's controls. Just because you think something should happen does not mean that is the way it is. Especially these days with corporations. Any company is going to try and keep their bottom dollar as high as possible. So fight corporate, not us. Anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and keep moving along with these stories. This next part is a segment I was hoping to do for its own episode, but I figured why not just put this small segment in here in this one and see how you guys like it. Maybe you guys have some other stories similar to these. It's a small segment I was going to call People Who Do the Right Thing, specifically the customers that help do the right thing. We're actually going to start out with a little bit of, I guess you would call it, lore for my background. This story is about the time when my dad stopped a guy that was stealing from a grocery store in a small town that we had just moved to. This is a story that I've heard as long as I can remember, by family and even by other people who were there and so forth. The town was very small when we got here, and it was a rather big event. So, for a little bit of my background, my family moved to where I'm living now when I was 1 year old. Mom and dad were in the Navy. My dad definitely enjoyed the gun rights that he had out here. And of course, he already had his own collection of guns to start with. My mom, on the other hand, fell in love with where we live for a whole nother reason. She said when we pulled in here, I swear it looked like Mayberry from Andy Griffith. I just fell in love immediately. We'd drive through the town, people would just wave, and it was a nice, calming, relaxing feel compared to where we lived before. Well, very shortly after we moved here, my family went out to our local grocery store to stock up. It's somewhere in the summer. I want to say July or August. It's in the middle of the desert. It's very dry, very hot. Essentially, it's like walking into an oven. As my family is walking up toward the store, we see some guy just completely bolting out of the store. The man is wearing jean cutoff shorts, no shirt, and has a ponytail to about the middle of his back. He's got a grocery cart completely filled up as much as possible with booze, meat, charcoal, mops, brooms, cups, just a little bit of everything for a nice barbecue and maybe some home essentials. Well, chasing right after him was an elderly man in an apron who worked for the store, yelling, "Thief! Thief! Stop him!" I know that probably gives you an idea of how old I am, as people aren't allowed to do that anymore. As the elderly man was catching up to the thief ended up knocking him down somehow. Probably pushing him, or maybe tripping him, or who knows. Not 100% sure. But my dad was just going to ignore everything until he saw the elderly employee get knocked down. He came from a big city where it's usually a bad idea to get involved, but once he saw that, he couldn't hold back anymore. He immediately ran over toward the thief, grabbed the thief by his ponytail, and jerked him down to the ground. My father immediately drew his gun and he yelled at the thief, "Don't move, you move and I shoot." Keep in mind, like I said, it is summertime. It's hot. He's shirtless with shorts. And I believe a couple of people said he might have been wearing flip-flops or some sort of crappy sandals. So he might as well have just been naked. And my dad just slammed this guy onto the hot asphalt in the parking lot. Needless to say, the guy is crying and pleading, "Please, please, it's hot. Can I stand up or at least sit up, something?" To which my dad said, "Nope." The thief tried begging more, "But it's hot. It burns. Please." My dad just said, in a very flat tone, apparently, "Well, you should have thought about that before ripping off a store and pushing an old man. If you move, you die." Now, of course, someone inside the store was already trying to call the police as the man started running out. At the time, the store was pretty much surrounded by 4 square blocks of empty dirt fields, if not more. Just down the road was a fast food place that happened to have a cop station there on the main street looking toward the store. Just at the time when all of this was going down, they were getting the call, but before they even got the call, they were watching it. The cop happened to look over, see everything, and they were already on their way to get the full story. The cops pulled up. My dad just put his hands in the air and waited for instructions as he was taught to do. The cops questioned the employee involved, my dad, my mom, and anyone else they could inside of the store. I believe the man had to be taken to the local hospital to tend to some pretty gnarly burns on his torso, but right after that, he was taken to jail. I'm not sure exactly what happened to him after that, but up until I was about 9 or 10, we would go into that same store, and the very same employee that was knocked down would always make sure that he said hi to my dad and reminded him how grateful he was. Sadly, these days, even in the state that I live in, my dad would probably have been arrested and sued, and the thief probably wouldn't have gotten much more than a slap on the wrist. He probably would have claimed that he was traumatized by what happened, or that my dad used excessive force and inhumane treatment, or something ridiculous. But this is what used to scare more thieves away, the fact that people as a whole used to care and chip in. If a criminal was doing something, people used to stop it, or at least attempt. That doesn't happen anymore. Companies don't allow you to do anything. The police completely discourage anyone. And I'm not saying I don't understand. In certain big cities, you can't just go up and try to tackle someone anymore. They're a lot more likely to shoot you now. But in the more redneck areas, guess what? If we see you doing something stupid, you're liable to get shot or maybe just get your ass beat. We live by fuck around and find out, and you will find out. Well, we're going to go ahead and move on to this next one, keeping up with the people who do the right thing. This story is about the customer that threatened someone in line because he was being rude to me. So, I'm working at a small retail company at the time. I'm the only one in the store, running the cash register, trying to help customers, finding whatever they need while ringing up everyone else, doing my best to keep up with the rush and just balance everything out. Luckily enough, more often than not, at least at this particular store I was at, most of my regulars were very patient, and they understood that I was going as fast as possible, doing my best, trying to help everyone in a timely manner, and that overall it's not my fault. Well, one guy comes in. He's waiting in line for a few minutes, while I'm multitasking as best as I can, and starts making a ruckus on how this is such bullshit. He needs to focus on the line, not all the other people looking for stupid shit. He needs more people here. This is not my fault he's alone. He needs to call someone in. Blah, 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 blah. Typical bullshit spewing out of someone who's obviously never worked this job. Well, most everyone just tried to ignore him because they knew that there's only so much I can do at this point. But after about literal 5 minutes of him going off about how I suck at my job, I'm an idiot, this is bullshit, etc., 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 well, finally one of my regulars that was in line behind him had finally had enough and hollered at the guy, "Dude, if you don't shut your fucking mouth, you'd better hope the cops get here in time to save your ass." To which the rude customer responded with, "What's that, big man? You think you're tough?" And the regular calmly said, "I've taken on worse than you, punk. Shut your fucking mouth or leave. Otherwise, you're getting your ass whooped." Of course, the other customer that was actually causing the problems to begin with, and being absolutely rude, started to set his stuff down like he was ready to fight. And at that point, about 5 more customers set their stuff down, pretty much cornering the guy before he even realized what was going on. A couple of the people in the group were just like, "All right, that's enough. You can walk out of here right now, or you can be drug out by this entire group of us. It's your choice." They made a small walkway for him, and the customer just looked at everybody, realizing how bad he fucked up. And he just walked out quietly without anything, without saying anything, without doing anything else. He just left. I personally am always very, very thankful for the customers that take care of businesses and stick up for the people behind the counter. Those are the people who have either just worked our jobs before, or have in general just been raised right, and it gives me a little bit of hope for humanity. So for all those customers willing to stick up for the poor schmo that's just doing their job with the little bit of resources they've been given, you guys are awesome, and I'm sure you don't realize exactly what kind of impact you make on the workers. Please don't ever change the way you are. This next story goes along some of the same lines, of course. This was the time an off-duty officer was actually shopping at my store. I will preface this story of saying I always take things with a grain of salt if I'm not there. I was never able to look at the video for this because it was just a super busy week, but this story always sticks out in my mind. It was definitely an interesting one. I'm working at the same small store at this time, and the incident I'm going to tell you about is something that actually happened on my day off, and the customer came in a day afterwards to tell me about it. So apparently this guy is a local cop, and he was just starting his family vacation. So he's off duty. He's in my store getting stocked up on stuff he needs, and he's just walking around when he sees this guy down an aisle trying to put stuff in his pockets, not really paying any attention to his surroundings, because that's what a good thief does, right? Not paying attention. The off-duty cop told me that he's been in enough situations where he knows to always carry some sort of badge or something to identify himself, just in case shit hits the fan. That way he can make sure people know he's a cop. So he tells me he walks up to the guy, taps him on the shoulder, and pulled out his badge and said, "Dude, I'm off duty. I don't want to do any paperwork today. Just put it back." And the guy just set the stuff back on the shelf. The off-duty cop followed the guy right out. Like I said, I still personally have to take this story with a grain of salt, but it's definitely interesting. I'd like to think maybe more so hope that this type of thing probably happens more often than I'd imagine. But I'm just glad that overall nothing crazy happened. The guy didn't try to fight or anything. He just left. And of course, I was very thankful for the off-duty cop being a good human and doing his job, whether he was on duty or off duty. That's the type of thing people should be able to do, is we should be able to call each other out if we see something wrong. That being said, we're going to move on to this next fun story. This one happened shortly after I left for the day, and my manager on duty had called me up to relay the message about what had happened. So I'm the store manager at this small retail store, same one from the last couple stories. And I leave for the day. My MOD at the time was alone for a few hours, as was common with this particular company. Well, he's dealing with a small line, nothing too crazy. And this kid, maybe somewhere between 16, 19 at oldest, comes in and starts shopping. The next thing my MOD knows, the kid just bolts out the door with a handful of stuff. My MOD turns to the customer that he's ringing up and just goes, "Excuse me a moment." And he runs to the door to try and get a description of the car, maybe get a license plate or whatever. And he sees the kid in a car with one of our regular customers, who's an elderly lady, I want to say probably around her 70s or 80s. The kid was yelling at the lady to just hurry up and get the fuck out of the parking lot. The lady, who was just sitting there looking at the kid like, "Excuse me, what did you just say to me?" And she realizes that my MOD is at the door of the store. She rolled down her window, and my MOD just said, "He didn't pay for any of that." The lady says, "What?" And my MOD repeats, "He didn't pay for any of that." And the lady just starts smacking the ever-living shit out of this kid, gets out of the car, and drags the kid out of the car by his ear, making him grab everything he stole and made him go pay for it. Apparently, the kid is the elderly lady's neighbor, and he asked her for a ride to go shopping. So, in her words, of course, being a good Christian lady, I said no problem and gave him a ride. And the next thing she knows, she finds out her neighbor is a thief. She's not going to let that fly. She apologized so deeply to my MOD, making the kid apologize too, and we told him that he's no longer welcome in our store. The elderly lady was yelling at the kid all the way out of the store, and could hear her yelling at him as they were pulling out of the parking lot. Thank God for people who just don't give a fuck how old they are. Their morals are higher than their fear. Alright, well that wraps up the few stories I have for people doing the right thing. Thank you to all those people. I doubt you're listening, but if you are awesome people. Thank you so much, and I hope we get more people to stand their ground like you do. when it comes to defending us or just making sure people aren't getting away with doing bad stuff like stealing or whatever. That being said, moving on. This next story is from a gentleman. He calls himself Rooster. Rooster says at one point he was a pool cleaner down in southern Arizona. It was a hot, miserable, very typical blistering heat day for the area. He and his team had done 2 other jobs earlier in the day, and they were on to their next. This house was one that had been foreclosed on, and the bank was having them clean up. When they got to the house, it was obvious that it was a rundown drug house, so that always comes with its own set of surprises, shall we say, when cleaning up. They get to the backyard, and they see it, the black pool of the unknown. This water was so disgusting. It was slimy, black, it just smelled god-awful, and it kind of looked like tar. They could tell it was just not going to be a fun time. So they drained the pool enough to see that there were chairs and tires and all sorts of other stupid shit thrown in there and just degrading in the pool. Well, they drained the water about 75% of the way out, just enough to get in there and start pulling out most of the big shit. As Rooster was climbing down the ladder, he somehow lost his balance. He slipped, he hit the ladder, and he fell into the foul-smelling abyss. Covered in all this black slime of God knows what. Fearing hospitalization, Rooster decides to strip naked and take the ride home in the truck that way. The smell was just too atrocious. Rooster said that as he was throwing his clothes to the side, what he described to me as it looked like the symbiotic movement like Venom from Spider-Man. You know, when he's just like that pool of ick that's sitting there moving. Well, poor guy will probably never forget that day, sadly. Thanks for your story, Rooster. That one, I'm so sorry you went through that. That seems just god-awful. Absolutely god-awful. But sadly, things like that happen, and depending on the job, you've got to deal with some gross shit. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on now. So, as I was going around trying to advertise my show and get some more stories, I walked into a tire shop. And when I was explaining everything, the manager of the tire shop said, "Oh, I've got a couple of stories for you immediately." So, I was hoping he'd send them to me. He hasn't sent them yet, but I'm go ahead and tell the stories that he told me real quick. So, for the first story, he says, one day a guy came in and said that his tire was making noise and shaking. The guy at the shop figured, okay, no problem. It probably just needs to be rebalanced. Pretty basic in this line of work. So they get the car back into the back, they raise it up, they take the tire off, and on the inside of the rim that's facing, like the undercarriage. Sorry, I'm pretty car-tarded. I don't know most of the actual names, and I'm not going to sit there and say the wrong thing to be made fun of. So I'll just admit I'm stupid and I don't know car stuff. Anywho, the part of the tire that faces the inside of the car, like all the undercarriage and all that, has a little bit of an indent, as most of us should know. And on that indent on the inside of the tire, it was lined with nothing but a shit ton of drugs. Obviously, it didn't take them long to figure out what the problem was. Needless to say, they had to call PD, and they had to move on with their day. The second story is apparently another time, another guy came in, and he said he had a flat tire. Again, no big deal. Usually a quick, easy fix. They look, they can't patch it, so they just swap out the tire. They get it out of the shop, and they inform the customer that the car is done, and they tell him the price. At this point, the customer goes, "Oh shit, I don't have any money." And he pulls out what looks like a brick of drugs and says, "Do you think this will cover the cost?" The guy at the shop just tried to laugh it off and kind of joke with the guy because it was a really awkward situation. And he just tried saying, "Well, man, I don't think my manager knows the street value of that stuff, man. I'm sorry." He didn't tell me if they ended up having to take the tire back off or whatever else happened, but that had to have been interesting. I wonder if they ever called the cops. Bro, if you're listening, please send me these stories with more detail. I will go back over them. I just want to know, like, what happened after that. Did you have to call the cops? Did he miraculously come up with some money or what? I'm curious. Well, with that being said, season 1 is officially at a close now. I just want to say I really appreciate everyone who's been listening, either from the beginning or whether you just started last week. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for all of your stories, for anyone who sent any in. And please don't forget to send yours, any of them that you can think of. The faster I have more stories, the faster I can get season 2 out. So, with that being said, thanks again for listening, guys. Obviously, I try to keep everyone's identities safe so that they can be protected so there's no backlash from any of these companies or anyone else for any reason whatsoever. So, for everyone sending in their stories, I thank you. Whatever I call you on the show is all you will ever be known as. With that being said, I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Denise Esparza for the artwork. She's the one who did the little thumbnail that you see when I upload all of my episodes, and I do look forward to working with her for any changes in artwork that I decide to do later. If you're interested in seeing anything else and more artwork that she does, you can follow her on Nisi Art on Instagram. That's NEISSE _ART on Instagram. Also, big shout out and a thank you to Nivation. He's the one responsible for the music you hear at the beginning and the ending of the episodes. If you wish to follow him and see what else he provides musically, that is Nivation. Spotify is the only platform that he gave me to shout him out on, but I just wanted to make sure he got the credit for what he did for me. I really do appreciate everything you guys have done for me to help me get this show started and to keep it going. Thank you guys. I really honestly could not have done this without you. For everyone else, thank you again for all your stories. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. One last reminder, please do not forget to check me out pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast. That's where I'm trying to get to. Obviously, the biggest ones I'm going to be on are Patreon and Spotify, but check me out, see where you can find me. Patreon will be the biggest help for me. And as I'm pretty sure I've stated before, that will also help you guys later on. I'm hoping to be able to do live Q&As. I'm hoping to be able to do conversations, one-on-one chats, group chats. I don't care. Maybe like some of the other people I've listened to doing podcasts, we can even make trips out of this and just make it a community. I just want to have fun with this. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. And I hope you can help make the community I'm looking to make. Thanks again, guys. This is Alpha signing off. See you next episode.